Well, as you heard from Peter Berger there, the CEO of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, what we really need if we're going to meet the dual challenges of climate change and feeding a growing population is a transformative action. So welcome to our high-level panel on the UN Food Systems Summit and the many roles of seed. As we heard from Peter, the summit in September is really a unique opportunity to accelerate private sector action to transform food systems. Many of the speakers in this panel are working with Peter to make sure the voice of the seed sector is heard during the discussions. And they've also signed a declaration drawn up by the International Seed Federation, which outlines the seed sector's contribution to the Sustainable Development Goals. We'll be finding out their role in the UNFSS, why they signed the declaration, and how they're contributing to a more resilient food system for the benefit of the planet and people. So we're joined remotely by Ruramiso Mashumba, a farmer from Zimbabwe and founder of Mnandi Africa, an organization that helps rural women combat poverty and malnutrition. Franck Berger, with me in the studio. And Franck is CEO of the Vegetable Seeds Board Division of Group Limagrain, the global market leader in vegetable seeds. And Franck represents France on the board of ISF. Joining us remotely, Mary-Anne Sayoc, who wears two hats. She's the Public Affairs Lead of East West Seed International, a market leader for tropical vegetable seeds in Asia, Africa and Latin America. Mary-Anne is also the president of the Philippine Seed Industry Association. And Erik Fyrwald is the CEO of Syngenta Group, one of the world's leading agricultural companies, a market leader in crop protection, and number 3, I understand, globally in seeds, unless he corrects me. He's also chairman of the Syngenta Foundation for Sustainable Agriculture. So I really want to thank everybody for joining us today. So let's start with the discussion on the UN Food Systems Summit. Franck, to you first. You heard Peter Berger there outline his ambitions for this summit. What do you want to get out of it?
Well, before maybe I tell what I want to get out of it, I would like to say that it is very interesting, a chance actually for the private sector to be able to be a part of this discussion. When we heard about food systems, there is an S behind it, which shows that actually there is not only one system, but as many systems which embrace agricultural inputs, production of food, transformation of food, and consumption. And I think we can translate this also to the seed sector, because there are as many seed systems across the globe as there are food systems. And I think the recognition at the UN level of this wide, I would say, array of systems and of actors in this system is also very important. Our sector is diverse, and we have here a unique opportunity to show that diversity at the UN global level.
And what would you like to come out of this summit?
Well, I would like to come out that the very important role of seeds is recognized as a major actor of this transformation. Actually, this long transformation that has already taken place over the past decades towards improving the crops for the benefits of the farmers and globally for the benefits of the consumers and society.
Mary-Anne, let me go to you and ask what you would like to see come out of the UN Food Systems, as Franck has just said, summit.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. The UN Food Systems Summit is a great opportunity for countries and the private sector to rethink agriculture with a food system approach in mind. There is a long list of game-changing solutions that came out of the various dialogues, and I would like to see a coalition of action for multi-stakeholders, government, business, civil society, NGOs, academia, and farmers' organizations to transform the food system. Although there are no binding agreements among countries, I want to see declarations of commitments put into collective action and hold each other accountable for implementation and monitoring. One example of this is the National Food System Action Hubs, where I would really like to see food system actors meet on a whole-of-nation approach and drive positive change.
Thank you very much, Marianne. Let me ask Erik Fyrwald, CEO of Syngenta, what you would like to get out of the summit.
First of all, I think it's a critically important summit at this time in the world's development. With climate change driving weather extremes that are making things incredibly challenging for farmers around the world. You've heard about the heat dome in Pacific Northwest of US and Western Canada, reaching temperatures up to 49.6 degrees. We are seeing increased drought, flooding, wind events, and even cold weather significantly impacting farmers' ability to grow crops. So I think if the world comes together and realizes that we have to help farmers adapt to climate change and also be part of the solution to climate change, and then have the entire food system support that, it will be clear that seed technology is critically important to that, as well as other technologies that farmers need to have to be able to address this incredibly important challenge. So I think if we come away understanding the importance of the challenge, and by the way, food commodity prices are going up dramatically, food prices are going up dramatically, we need to feed the world and take care of the planet. If the world recognizes the importance of technology to be able to solve these challenges and the criticalness of seed technology in that, then it will be a big success.
And we'll be talking more about seed technology and innovation, but let me ask Ruramiso, a Zimbabwean farmer and the founder of the Mnandi organization, which helps poor women combat poverty and nutrition. Ruramiso, what would you like to see out of the summit?
I concur with the previous speaker. What I would like to see come out is more what can we do as a whole value chain to support farmers on the ground, access technology that will help them grow more climate smart cropping. So there's a lot of technologies that are out there, but the real challenge is that the reach of these, especially when we're looking at developing countries like Zimbabwe, where access to these technologies is very expensive. It's mainly available for in developed worlds. So how can we improve that and reduce the cost? Because currently farmers have to carry the whole cost of on their own. But how can we look at a value chain approach where we are supporting, making sure that farmers are reducing carbon emissions, are adapting to climate smart practices, but they're not carrying the costs on their own.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, no, and that actually picks up, doesn't it, exactly on what Peter Berger was saying earlier about this need for this just transition and the focus on small farmers. Absolutely. Now, we were also hearing about the ISF seed declaration. Peter Berger said he'd like to see another page on it, and for it to be slightly more ambitious. Let me ask you, Erik, your view on what Peter Berger has just said, and perhaps a more simple question, why did you sign it?
We signed the declaration because now is the time when the world has to step up to these challenges, and the seed industry is a critically important part of stepping up to these challenges. So it was no question that Syngenta Group was going to be part of this. However, we also agree with Peter Berger, we're very engaged with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, that it needs to go beyond this declaration, that we need to not only become carbon neutral, in fact, carbon positive in agriculture, capture the CO2 from the air and put it into the soils, but also protect biodiversity, lift up everybody in the value chain, including the poor smallholder farmers around the world, and also help consumers access healthier, better tasting foods that are also better for the planet, and let consumers make the choice to buy environmentally friendly foods. If we do that, we will solve this crisis.
Thank you. Franck, your view on the seed declaration and why Limagrain Group signed it, and would you agree with Erik there that it needs to go one step beyond what it says at the moment?
Well, I fully agree and concur with Erik. There was no question also for Limagrain that we would sign the declaration. Actually, 3 years ago, we revamped our project for the company, and we call it Cooperating for the Progress of Agriculture Everywhere for Everyone. So cooperating means working with all the parts involved, and everywhere for everyone means that everyone from the farmers to the consumers have to find value on this. That's the first reason. The second reason is that we absolutely do believe in the power of plant breeding and innovation. Lately, Euroseeds, so our European Seed Association, has commissioned a study by a German scientist, Mr. Doole, and he has proven that over the last 20 years, if we would not have had plant breeding and the progress of plant breeding, we would have needed 20 more million hectares of farmland to be able to supply the needs of the European population. So it is this power which we absolutely need to continue leverage to be able to meet the challenges ahead, the climate ones, the population one, and the quality of food one.
Marianne Sayoc, your view on the seed declaration.
Yeah. So Eastern Seed and also the Philippine Seed Industry Association signed the declaration because, well, I agree with what Erik and
Franck.
Sorry, Franck.
It's difficult. He's in the studio with me, so it's easy, but he's remote for you.
Exactly, so I can see his face here. Anyway, because it highlights the valuable contribution of the seed sector in the food system and in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. We have seen in Michael Keller's presentation earlier that seed is the vital starting point of crop production and is central to food security and rural development. So giving farmers access to quality seeds will enable them to produce safe and nutritious food, improve their livelihoods, and reduce poverty. But to support the private seed sector's contributions to the SDGs, there is also a need. So let me just highlight the asks of the private sector. The need for the adoption of harmonized and science-based regulations for seeds, allow free and efficient movement of seeds, and also conservation and sustainable use of plant genetic resources.
All very important issues for the seed sector. Let's look at crop diversification. The UN is advocating for more of this for reasons of nutrition and food security and environmental impact. At the moment, I understand that 60% of the world food supply is from just 3 crops, rice, maize and wheat. So they're asking for more crop diversification. Ruramiso, let me bring you into the conversation as a farmer. What is the view of farmers on crop diversification, and do they see any challenges or concerns in actually executing this on the ground?
Thank you. So looking at crop diversification, as farmers, we see that as an added advantage because when you monocrop, you start having low yields. But when you do have a crop rotation, especially after bringing in a cereal and then bringing in a legume, you're likely to improve your soils and you get higher yields. So I would say farmers would want to crop diversify, and as long as it's with a crop that is high value, that they're able to make a profit out of. The challenge is when you have to diversify with something that might be environmentally friendly but doesn't have a return on investment for the farmers, because now the question is, are farmers willing to grow something and not make any money, which most farmers, at least here in Zimbabwe, would not be willing. But like we found when farmers rotate something like maize and then they grow soybean. Soybean is very high value in Zimbabwe, and it's a leguminous crop which adds nitrogen into the soil, and it improves yield, and also it's got a good price return on investment for farmers. So that is a good crop rotation for farmers to rotate with their cereal. So that's those sort of crops. Even our beans, our local beans also have a high return on investment for farmers. So farmers would rotate with those crops. I think maybe the challenge would be that the lack of information, but diversification definitely is an added value. for farmers.
What about locally adapted crops? Do you see that there's value, there's financial value and markets in having improved varieties for those?
Yes, absolutely. So I grow some indigenous grains in Zimbabwe, but one of our greatest challenges right now is that we are unable to get certified seeds for those local varieties. So usually they are more labor intensive to grow, as in there's not so much research, at least that I've had access to, in terms of the indigenous grains, and there's not so many certified. So we use a lot of recycled seed. Our yields are low. There needs to be a lot of improvement in terms of even the seed, looking at how can we grow, because some of the seed, even processing it is difficult. So I think they would definitely, it would be an advantage, because a lot of them are drought resistant and very good, especially for in times of climate change and challenges of rainfall. But the greatest challenge again is that there isn't a lot of companies that have taken them up and certified them, and also just improved on their quality so that they're able, so that we can process them more easy. So most of them is a really manual labor intensive process.
Ruramiso, you're on the right panel, because we've got the leaders of some seed companies. Let me ask Franck for your response to what Ruramiso was saying about the lack of what she needs.
Yes, actually, I think the seed companies globally already breed for a large number of crops. At Limagrain only, we breed for 55 different crops, be them staple crops or vegetables, and most of them are actually intended for local markets. Actually, local is the name of the game in seeds. You cannot do anything really proper if you are not trying to make local adaptation. Now, what Ruramiso maybe is referring to is the lack of organized circuits and organized systems locally for a certain number of crops. And this is where actually partnerships come to play, and where the private sector together with the public sector, but also the local communities, the farmers' cooperatives themselves, can come together to bring solutions to this lack sometimes of certified seeds or quality seeds in certain areas.
And Marianne, because East West Seeds works a lot on this, so what are you doing to get these sort of seeds to farmers all over the world?
Similarly, East West Seed, in fact, introduced the market-oriented plant breeding in Southeast Asia, and we developed hybrids and improved varieties of locally adopted vegetable crops. At the moment, we work with 60 tropical vegetables and about more than 970 varieties. And these are local crops that are grown and marketed widely and preferred by consumers. And we promote the crop diversification, intercropping with vegetables, especially in areas where monoculture crops such as rice, corn, and coconut are grown. We do this through our knowledge transfer program in partnerships with NGOs and local governments, where we organize farmer field schools, demonstration areas, and farm business schools, so that farmers would be able to learn both the technical side of producing and also some entrepreneurial skills.
So we've talked a little bit about locally adapted crops. There's also the issue of orphan crops. And in the seed declaration, under SDG 2 on ending hunger, it says the seed sector needs to improve varieties of orphan crops. So, crops such as cassavas and yams and sweet potatoes. Erik, I wanted to bring you in because you're the CEO of the Syngenta Foundation. And there always seems to be this, dilemma. How do we facilitate the development of new varieties and traits of these sort of crops that can be very useful for, poor farmers or poor consumers, but they might not have a huge commercial revenue?
Great point, and a very important question. So in Syngenta, our company focuses on crops where we can make money today. Now, we train a lot of smallholder farmers, and it takes years to bring them up, but we focus on developing seeds and advancing seeds that are commercial. With our Syngenta Foundation, which we support every year with significant funding, We have the Syngenta Foundation that partners with other companies, other organizations that bring important capabilities like AGRA, the Gates Foundation, Swiss Development Fund, and the German Development Fund to bring capability to crops like cassava, teff, sorghum, millet, to make sure that they're getting good genetics, good seed care products to protect the seed, and helping the farmers to get access to these seeds and grow them in a way that's successful for them, that they can earn a living, and also do it with sustainable practices. We say regenerative agriculture practices. So really important that this happens. Syngenta, as a company, reaches many millions of farmers, but through our foundation, we reach many pre-commercial farmers with the approach to orphan crops that are important for them locally.
So I would really like to encourage the audience, do submit questions in the live chat because, well, you've just heard the expertise that we have in this discussion, a very varied expertise from East West Seeds, Limagrain Group, Syngenta, and we're really hearing from Ruramiso about what it's like to be a farmer on the ground. So please do submit your questions. And let's just go back to this seed declaration, because under SDG 13, it was talking about improved varieties to help farmers combat climate change. And I think it would be nice just to get a bit of a snapshot from Ruramiso on climate change. Just tell us, how is it impacting farmers in Zimbabwe?
Climate change has been very difficult to work around. Last year was one of the first years we've had good rains, but the previous 3 years we had very terrible droughts. Would have sometimes the season would come to an end early, or the season will start late. So when the season ends early, sometimes crops will still be at pod filling stage, and that means that they are not able to reach the full cycle for the farmer to get a yield. So we've had a lot of incidents of that happening to many farmers, and that meant loss as well, because a lot of farmers do not have any irrigation ability. So most farmers depend on the rainfall. So it's really been a very challenging time. I'm just handling climate change and understanding it. We definitely need a lot of technology for us to be able to access weather stations, which will help us to be able to predict the changes in the climate. Also, the seeds need to be designed ideally to be able to cope with the shorter seasons, but still give high yields, because traditionally short season cropping have produced low yields. So there's a lot that still needs to be done.
Well, you've got a very captive audience here, Ruramiso, about not just improved seeds, but other technologies, even including weather monitoring systems that you were mentioning there. Erik, if I can ask you to respond to what Ruramiso has just said, but if we focus on seeds, you might want to talk about weather systems. Please do, if that's something that Syngenta offers to farmers. But then let's look at these climate-resistant seeds and what you're doing. So over to you, Erik.
Yeah, what's really interesting is this is a horrible challenge for the world, the climate change and the weather extremes. But it is an opportunity for seed companies to develop technologies that farmers want and need around the world. So we give you one example. We have something called artesian corn, which is a leading drought-tolerant corn. And what we did was we looked at our hybrid performance all around the world and found that a couple of hybrids had much better performance than all the rest under drought conditions, much higher yields. And we're able to find the genes that made that happen and then breed those naturally into products all around the world. And now one of our highest selling corn products is artesian corn that has this trait. So that is one example of growth. We've got a number of others that I'll quickly hit on. We've got Yum tomatoes, which we've developed, our breeders developed to taste better, to be healthier, but to also have longer shelf life. So there'll be less waste, and they're selling like crazy. We have Enogen corn we sell in the United States, which is actually a GMO corn, but it makes the maize more available for animals to eat. So cows eat 5% less corn and gain the same weight. Dairy cows eat the same amount of corn and produce 5% or more dairy, more milk production, and there's 5 to 15% less greenhouse gas emissions. So these are just a few examples of products that we've developed that are our fastest growing products because they help farmers adapt to climate change, deal with weather extremes, but also reduce their impact on climate, reduce their carbon footprint, which the food companies and consumers are demanding. And in fact, in China, we've got something called MAP, Modern Agriculture Platform, where we teach farmers regenerative agriculture practices, and we provide them these modern tools so that they grow products with less carbon footprint. Then we put the MAP, we call it MAP beside logo, on the food product, and we're now on 30 food products in China on retail, and a QR code that allows the consumer to scan the code, see a picture of the farmer who grew their product, and the sustainability data. Consumers want to buy sustainably grown foods. And this is the future of foods, where if we can let the consumer know what is sustainably grown, they will buy it. And then that drives value for and also increased profitability for the farmers that grow sustainable crops and the whole value chain, including the seed producer.
So, Erik, thank you very much for outlining some of the things that Syngenta is doing on climate-resistant traits and varieties. I think it's only fair that I should ask the other companies to say what they're doing too. Franck, what's Limagrain doing on climate-resistant seeds?
Well, I think the key word under all the initiatives that Erik Fyrwald has identified explicitly is the word efficiency. What is important today is to make sure that we have plants, or we can bring plants to the farmers that are efficient in using the water, meaning necessitating less water to create a similar output, more efficiency on the use of our inputs, like nitrogen, for instance, which we know is a big problem because of the runoffs of nitrogen into the environment. So we have several programs that are directed to this, but there is also another element to it, which is that through climate change, you are also seeing more and more new disease pests, plant pests appearing, and you also see them spreading more across the planet even faster. And at Limagrain, particularly in the vegetable, we dedicate a lot of resources, and the actual number is 34% of our total R&D expense is towards building up natural resistances in plants so that they can defend themselves. So produce more for the farmers, but also necessitate less of some of the inputs that are less desirable, like some of the chemical pesticides.
Understood. Marianne, I'm just wondering, you're very much focused in Asia. Of course, you're also the president of the Philippine Seed Association. How do you convince these farmers to buy these seeds every year? Because, of course, there is a cost to this, rather than using the seeds that they might naturally have.
Farmers are easy to convince for them to see is to believe. So our strategy is really show them that these improved seeds work. So we always organize as the Philippine Seed Industry Association with 27 member companies to do variety awareness programs, field days, and harvest festivals. And we always emphasize to them that, seeds is actually only about 5 to 10% of the total cost of crop production. So, and it is the most important input. So they should not really scrimp on seeds. So that's how we convince them. And when they see that they get higher, better income, higher yield using these improved varieties, then we don't need to convince them again, because they say that you can only fool a farmer once with a bad harvest.
And thank you for submitting some of your questions, and I'm going to take them in a moment. I'm just going to ask each of our speakers for something about access, because the Access to Seeds Index says only 10% of the world's smallholders have access to all of these improved seeds that we've been talking about. So, Franck, one thing that you're doing so that it's not just 10% of the world's smallholders who benefit from these improved seeds?
Well, I'd like to go back to the notion of systems here. As we say, there are as many systems, seed systems, as there are situations. Of course, in the Western world, in the developed countries, we see that there is, I would say, a pretty well divided roles and tasks. The seed companies usually do the breeding, do the research, do the innovation, but we are also working with large networks of farmers who are seed multipliers, multiply the seed, and then we try to bring the seed to the market through various systems. Any system is as robust as its weakest link. And the problem is that if you do not have all of these links aligned properly, then you will be at a loss to bring the innovation actually to the farmer. So there's a lot to it. There's a lot to do with regulation. There's a lot to do with how government helps the systems organize themselves. But there's also an element of self-organization. And I would like to come back here to the cooperative nature of Groupe Limagrain. We are farmers' own cooperative. These farmers organize themselves, and they really wanted to create something around the seed that will bring value to their farms as revenues, but that will also help them increase the yields and the output of their production. And this element of self-organization, I think, is extremely important.
Marianne, you say that once they've seen the product, the farmers want them. But 10% of smallholders having access to seeds is not very high. One thing can you do to make sure the next time that Access to Seeds Index comes out that it's higher?
Yeah. So we partner. I think having a good extension service is very important. And the example in the Philippines, when the extension service has been devolved to the local government units, farmers were not getting the right extension advice that they deserve. So private seed companies and even non-government organizations are now stepping into this arena of providing agriculture extension services to farmers. And that's the way that we could give them better access to information. Also, even helping them market their produce after we've given them the training, link them to the market, and also encourage them to just continue planting, no? Because sometimes the weather changes really is a big hindrance. But most farmers, once they see that they have gotten a good profit from one planting, then they would continue to the next.
Let me ask a question that's come in here from Michel Carlson from Sweden. Yes, Erik, I was going to you, but please jump in, say what you'd like to say, and then I've got another question for you.
Yeah, I think that this question is really, really important, because we can't have the world fed with 10% of the smallholders getting access to technology. So I think it's really important that we as companies bring the technology and governments put in place with us the right regulatory frameworks to allow the technology to come. But let me give you 3 examples that we're working on with partners, and as Franck and Marianne talked about, really critical to come together to help farmers access these technologies. But one in Africa is called the Farm to Market Alliance. And it's a partnership with the World Food Program, Agro, Rabobank, Bayer, Yara, and Syngenta. And there we're putting in place agri-entrepreneurs, people that can help farmers to access these technologies, but then also to access markets to be able to sell, aggregate the demand so that they can sell their products. This is going on now in Kenya, in Tanzania, and Zambia, and we'll go broader in Africa as we have more success and create a model that works. And we want to bring in more partners to this. And in India, we've got something called agri-entrepreneurs that we do with Tata. We've trained over 5,000 entrepreneurs, young, energetic Indians that want to go out and help smallholder farmers get access to inputs, but then also to be able to sell their products and help them not just grow rice, but when they harvest rice, grow vegetables and make more money, more profits, and provide more food for the Indian people. And then our third program is what I described in China called MAP, where we're going to smallholder farmers in China, and with agronomists at every MAP center. We now have 400 MAP centers. We have 4 agronomists per center that teach the local farmers how to farm with modern tools and give them access to modern technologies that step change their yields and their profits, and by the way, protect the environment much better. So these things are happening. I think there are many examples around the world. What we need from this Food System Summit is to hear the good stories, lift them up, and have more people joining them to scale them much bigger and get that 10% towards 100%.
Thank you, Erik. That was a very important intervention. Let me also put a question that's just come in from Michelle Carlson from Sweden. Erik, to you. Besides plant breeding, are you starting to embrace digitalization and precision farming to help farmers improve their productivity?
Absolutely. So that's a big deal. So the big data was how we got our artesian corn. We were able to look at hybrids all around the world, and without the big data approach, the digital capabilities, we wouldn't have spotted the drought-tolerant genes that we were then able to naturally breed into corn hybrids around the world. That's one example. There are many other examples, but also on the crop protection side, we're working with partners to develop see and spray technologies, where you'd use digital imaging to see where there's a pest, a disease, an insect, a weed, and you spray where it's needed, not general spraying, which saves the farmer a lot of money, helps protect the environment, and make sure that the yields are protected. We also keep developing better seed care products, and we do this by digitally understanding what's going on all around the world and what seed care products can best protect the seed. And then finally, we have a big initiative in biologicals and natural occurring products. For example, seaweed extracts that are like vitamins to plants, that you put them together with the seed, you help the plant grow stronger and better resist diseases, insects, and grow bigger yields. So digital technologies are helping with all of this, including helping us to provide better agronomic services to farmers, when to plant, when to use crop protection, when to fertilize, when to harvest. These tools are enabling us to get to tens of millions more farmers than we could without the digital tools.
Marianne, how widespread is the use of these digital tools that Erik's been talking about, and also the idea of precision farming in the Philippines, and also you're the public affairs lead for East-West Seeds, as you have 2 hats. Oh, and if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Claire. For the Philippines, precision agriculture is still in the infant stage. But this real Food System Summit dialogues, the national dialogues, have stressed the importance of precision agriculture. So there are now companies who are really engaging in this. They talk about also use of digital tools in breeding, and even providing better extension services to farmers. Also, digital tools in monitoring seed production. So this is becoming more. I think the government is also supporting this. There are startup companies which are supported by the government, and companies who are going into offering digital platforms. So this is something that to watch out for in the Philippines.
And another question that has come in, if my iPad would work, and I saw it, and it was from Mike Lumina. And if anybody has got the question, because it was on intellectual property, but I only just quickly looked at it. So if anybody can tell me what that question is, but I think it was something about, can we talk about intellectual property and genetic resources? Please correct me, Mike, if that's wrong, and we'll see whether the iPad with the questions can work. But Franck, intellectual property and genetic resources, give it a stab.
Well, I give it a stab, yes. That's a vast question, actually, Claire, intellectual property and genetic resources.
I've got the question exactly. Mike Gumina of Rice Tech, definitely a member of ISF. How does intellectual property rights for seed genetic developers fit into this conversation? Yes.
Well, I think it is extremely fitting. You know, there's a series of considerations here. There's a number of international treaties, the CBDs, and the ITG-PRF, the International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources, which are in place. And actually, we are part of the conversation of making sure that there is a benefit sharing system in place that comes out of this treaty, which still is not in place. So there is a provision for this. That's the one. The second piece of it is intellectual property. R&D, we didn't speak about numbers, but R&D in the seed sector is expensive and intensive. On an average, we spend, I would say, about 15% of our revenues are actually put back into R&D activities. So having the right systems all over the place to be able to identify, recognize, and protect intellectual property are important. You know, there are two basic systems in place. There is the patent system for certain types of traits or inventions, and then there is the COV, which is under the UPOV convention, the recognition of the intellectual property rights on varieties with an exemptions for the breeders, so that we can have a continuous improvement on a genetic basis, which is made available to breeders for farmers.
Do you expect any of this to move a step forward at the CBD, which could well happen in Kunming in China in the autumn?
I am not an expert, and I do not know exactly what is on the table on the CBD, but what I know is that the seed sector is actually very attuned to the coexistence of the patent system and the UPOV to make sure that intellectual property is properly recognized, but also that on the other end, through the CBDs and the other treaties, the rights of the farmers and the rights of the countries are also well recognized.
Erik, let me throw this one at you then on intellectual property rights for seed genetic developers. Your thoughts?
Let me take in two pieces. One is Syngenta is very committed to helping lift up the 10% number we talked about before. So we donate intellectual property through our foundation for seeds for smallholder farmers, low-income smallholder farmers. One example is something we call, our Syngenta Foundation calls AAA maize in India, which is drought tolerant, has good genetics, and we've donated it through the Syngenta Foundation to small seed companies in India to provide to smallholder farmers in India. So that's one example is providing intellectual property to help lift up the 10%. The second is it's critically important for Syngenta, for Limagrain, for East-West Seeds, Bayer, Corteva, BSF, for all of us, for thousands of seed companies, to have our intellectual property protected globally. And we've had our intellectual property pirated in seeds all around the world, the United States, Eastern Europe, Latin America, everywhere in the world. And the biggest thing you hear about is China because of the geopolitical challenges. I can tell you, we vigorously defend our intellectual property everywhere from people that steal it, including in China. We've had a number of cases where we've taken intellectual property thieves in China to court, had them arrested, had them stopped selling our illegally pirated seeds, and our competitors have welcomed that in China because it's important that intellectual property, like in pharmaceuticals, be protected. So as Franck mentioned, we can spend a lot of money on research to develop new seeds, but it's also very important that we get the genetics to the low-income, smallholder farmers that need it, that don't get access to our latest and greatest seed products.
Yeah, no, I think everybody can understand that. We know with the pandemic, it's a lot about intellectual property waivers and, yes, how the pharmaceutical industry and your industry talk about, well, we need that for innovation. Another question that's come in from a lady in the Philippines. This year is the International Year of Fruits and Vegetables, where consumer health and nutrition are central. Franck, perhaps one for you. Are seed companies also looking at the nutrition aspect in breeding new crop varieties?
Indeed, they are. Actually, and I think there was a question about biofortified food, which is one topic which came up during the discussion in the United Nations Food Systems Summit. Elements of nutrition are elements of technological transformation, which are embedded in the varieties, are always very important. I think Michael earlier mentioned high oleic sunflowers, which is varieties of sunflowers with a better balance between saturated and unsaturated fats. At Limagrain, for instance, we've been working lately on a new breed of wheat, which is called Lifey wheat, which has long chains of starch, which make it much more digestible and create actually a much more healthier balance for the consuming of starch-based products. We also, there are several programs, and actually there was an interesting development lately with a gene-edited variety in Japan, which has a component which protects the heart in it. So yes, nutrition is something which is very closely not only watched, but worked upon by seed company, and I think it spans all across the full span of variety of species.
And I will come to Erik and Marianne in a moment on that, but I would like to bring in Ruramiso because I know that you've got some experience of growing these biofortified crops. This is yet another one of the subjects on the UN Food Systems Summit, biofortification. What's your experience with these crops, Ruramiso?
So we grow biofortified beans, and what we have found is that the yields are much higher in biofortified beans in comparison to our normal beans, our traditional beans, and they taste nicer. So consumers really want to be able to buy these biofortified beans because of they also cook faster. So our traditional beans take a long time to cook and use a lot of electricity, and at the moment electricity is quite expensive and not always available. So these beans are definitely a good option for farmers. So lots of farmers are really interested in growing the biofortified beans. Also, on top of that, there is the additional vitamin A, zinc, and iron in the beans. So I am an advocate for biofortified beans as well. And we're also looking at maybe growing biofortified sweet potato. At the moment, the planting material is just new in the country, but not that available. But as more of it is available, we'll be able to grow it more. And definitely, I can imagine biofortified sweet potato being much tastier than some of the potato varieties we have.
So there we are, a thumbs up on biofortified seeds. Erik, to get some idea of what you're doing about the nutrition aspect in breeding new crop varieties.
Let me give you 3 examples. One is in tomatoes. I mentioned the Hume tomato. We've increased the antioxidant level in the Hume tomato. We've also made it taste sweeter and better so people will eat more. So not only will they get more antioxidants, but they'll eat it more often because it tastes better. And we've extended the shelf life by a week, which is a big deal in the tomato industry, as you can imagine. So that's trying to hit multiple elements of sustainability. In strawberries, we've developed a strawberry process in China where we're able to work with farmers to grow strawberries and then sell them in Hema stores. These are Alibaba stores the next day. So they're picked very ripe, sold the next day, very fresh, great tasting, no additives, no colorants, anything, very natural. And people eat more because they taste so great. And because they're sold the next day, the supply chain has collapsed, so a lot less waste in the system. So the actual cost is not that much more to get consumers very fresh product that tastes great and obviously are very healthy. The third area I think is also really important is that there's more and more talk about plant-based foods and the importance to the environment and health for eating more plant-based foods. Well, many grains, many crops, soy included, are bred mainly for animal feed because that's the main outlet. Well, we're now breeding for human consumption of these crops to make sure that they taste better and you don't have to have a lot of additives to mask the off tastes that animals don't mind. So if you breed them for human use, then not only can humans access more plant-based products, but they like the taste better and they'll grow faster, and you don't have the additives that are less healthy. So it's even healthier than the plant-based products of today. So those are a few examples, but it's a really important area.
And that makes me think of what Peter Berger was saying about the importance of green proteins. One of the focuses on the summit, as most probably in the US and in Europe, we're all going to be eating less meat, but it could be an opportunity to grow more of these green proteins. Marianne, let me ask you two questions. The farmers in the Philippines, are they like Ruramiso and they see just positives with biofortified crops? And with your East-West hat on, what are you doing about looking into the nutrition aspect in breeding these new crops, biofortified crops?
Okay. Vegetables are naturally rich sources of micronutrients. That's why I think biofortification, farmers are not really looking for biofortified vegetables, but at Eastwood Swede, we breed like better vegetables, better quality, fruit quality, better tasty, more tastier tomatoes, so that consumers would eat more vegetables. Because if they eat more vegetables, then they get more of these nutrients, these micronutrients, which combat hidden hunger. And apart from that, of course, equally important is having vegetables that are affordable and accessible all year round. So then let me go back again to the importance of teaching farmers better agronomic practices so they could actually optimize the genetic potential of improved varieties. So that is really the objective of the knowledge transfer program of Eastwood Seed. So better agronomic practices plus quality seeds would mean higher productivity and higher income and better nutrition for them.
Franck, you mentioned it in one of your answers, of course, gene editing, which is seen as a tool for improving yields, improving varieties. Slightly stymied a couple of years ago with a European Court of Justice ruling. The European Commission has come out on a study. What's your take on where this is going for the seed sector industry?
Well, I think globally, gene editing or new genomic techniques, I mean, there's a host of words to describe it, is an incredibly powerful technology, which is being used in the human medicine sector. And we think it does have applications that are worthwhile exploring in the area of plant genetics. So we do see for the last 2 or 3 years that regulations are being designed across the globe in various shapes and forms, but globally with the tendency that no very stringent regulation should be applied on the vast majority on gene-edited products. I will not go into the technical details here. What we are seeing is that the study or the recommendation by the European Commission at the end of April really is a turning point, which is reopening the gates towards a revamped regulation in EU that will help bring this technology in time. I'm not expecting, and none of us here is expecting to see this resolved in the next 18 months or so, but we think that there will be an adapted regulation, science-based regulation, that will help bring these products to the market because they have a lot of promises into them.
Thank you. And we've got 2 more questions that I would like to pose to our distinguished speakers. Perhaps, Erik, with your hat on as the CEO of Syngenta Foundation, one from Joe Okot from Kenya. While considering the economic return, what are some of the strategies likely to be used to overcome low purchasing power, especially among smallholder farmers in developing countries?
First, just a quick correction. Simon Winter is the CEO of the Syngenta Foundation. He's a tremendous person that's spent a lot of time in Africa and knows much more about these things than I do. I'm the chairman of the foundation and CEO of Syngenta Group. But having said that, this is critically important that we lift up smallholder farmers that are pre-commercial, that are just getting started, that need to find ways to make enough income to grow their business. And I've personally been on the ground in Africa and saw a farmer by the name of Jonathan, who we helped to become a better rice grower. We're able to, through these efforts, multiple collaboration efforts, get him better rice seeds, and then help him sell those seeds, help him access to the marketplace. And with tears in his eyes, he was describing how his life had changed. He had gone from a mud hut, his kids not going to school, to a brick house, his kids going to school proudly. He showed me all his kids and was just tearful. The importance of this to the world, to lift up the poor so that they can earn money and grow a crop sustainably and feed the world, is so important that we have to work as foundations, as NGOs, as seed companies. We all have to work together to help make this happen, including with the governments, of course, government by government, country by country, close collaboration to find out what's blocking these things and make it happen, including the food companies who need to create the demand from these smallholders, because that demand creation that we can then fulfill closes the loop and makes it sustainable.
And Erik, in perhaps 30 seconds, because I want to end with hearing from Ruramiso, a quick question from Ganesh Raika of India. Do seed companies have any program in partnership with governments to support access to quality and affordable seeds, like some subsidy programs? Erik.
Absolutely. So our Agri-Entrepreneur Growth Foundation in India, which is also has Tata Foundation, has different states in India joining us. So together we're working with the local governments to provide the right genetics, the agri-entrepreneur training, and then the products that the agri-entrepreneurs get to the farmers. So the answer is absolutely yes, we need to do more of it. And I promise you, Syngenta, Limagrain, the rest of us are all willing to do that.
Ruramiso, I would like to ask you, you've been listening to this discussion. What more would you like to see from the seed companies to help smallholder farmers like yourself 30 seconds. It's most probably a much longer list, but just to conclude our programme.
I think I lost network. Can you please repeat that question?
Yes. You've been listening to the discussion. You've been seeing and hearing about some of the innovation, some of the challenges from the seed sector. What more would you like from the seed sector as a smallholder farmer?
Okay. What I would like from the seed sector is for them to not only just work on access to the seed for the farmers, but look at also the other holistic challenges that farmers are facing, and then offer like a more comprehensive solution. Farmers, yes, I understand the purpose of the seed company is to sell seed, but if they look at also what are the other challenges, the challenges of climate change, can they also offer some of their maybe their clients or customers something like even options of like weather stations that they can input in different communities? Maybe this will do with what Syngenta is doing with their foundation. So maybe those sort of looking at the other various challenges that farmers are facing, because seed alone would not solve the challenge that farmers are facing with climate change, but there needs to be a more holistic approach. So that's quite a big ask, but yeah, I was asked to say anything, so here it is. Thank you.
Well, we need to do big asks because we've got big challenges, and I think that many of the subjects that we've been discussing will come up at the UN Food Systems Summit, and as Peter Backer said, it may even be the pre-summit where the voice of the industry is going to be very important, that is even more significant. So I would like to thank our speakers. Let's hope I get the titles right. Erik Fyrwald, CEO of Syngenta Group; Ruramiso Mashumba, farmer from Zimbabwe and founder of Mnandi Africa; Franck Berger here in the studio with me, CEO of the Vegetable Seeds Board Division of Group Limagrain; and thank you very much also to Mary Ann Sayoc, Public Affairs Lead of East West Seeds International and also President of the Philippine Seed Industry Association. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your incredibly informed questions. That's all from us. Thank you.